Your attitude toward buying things determines who you will become, rich or poor. The main problem many people have is that they buy things incorrectly. This is some kind of huge global bug that lives in the mind of almost every person. Let's talk about this today. Let's imagine an ordinary life situation, buying a phone, a car, a house, or some other items. How can you determine through the way you make purchases whether you have this bug in your mind or not, whether you think correctly or not, and how effective your thinking is? Throughout my many years of experience, I've seen a lot of people, both rich and poor, and what really stands out is not that some have more money and others have less. What stands out is the consistent connection between a person's thinking and the financial state they end up having. Rich people are wealthy not because they have a lot of money. They are usually wealthy because they have a different way of thinking. And the poor, in turn, remain poor because of their limiting beliefs. And today we will talk about that. The thing is, I myself came from a distant village located in the center of Kazakhstan. I worked there as a shepherd for a year and a half, then went to the army, then entered university and began doing business. So I practically went through all stages, not extreme poverty, but certainly not a life of abundance. I clearly understand what it means to save money. I clearly understand what it means when money is not enough. I saw it in the example of my parents, and I experienced it myself. Back then, I didn't fully understand it, but now, analyzing my past and the experience I have today, I see how incorrectly poor people think about purchases. Their ineffective thinking leads to ineffective purchases. In other words, their purchases are simply a consequence of their ineffective mindset. And by the way, when I talk about rich and poor, it's actually a conditional division because I've seen wealthy people with a poor mindset, and I've seen poor people with an effective, wealth-oriented mindset. And if you observe the dynamics, I am convinced that those people who are poor today but have effective thinking will sooner or later become wealthy. And those wealthy people who have a poor, ineffective mindset, it's only a matter of time before they lose their money and wealth. Because there are many rich people who got their wealth undeservedly, through inheritance, through bribes, or through connections with authorities, and so on. Therefore, when we talk today about the difference in attitudes toward purchases between the rich and the poor, I'm not talking about their current financial state. I'm talking about their way of thinking. Let's break down what the thinking of a poor person looks like, the kind that leads to incorrect and ineffective purchases. First, at the lowest level, there are very poor people who truly have to save on everything. They have to save on everything, and they buy the cheapest things. And unfortunately, they don't even have the possibility to think about purchasing expensive items. They can't even lift their head from their poverty. No matter how poor a person is, I still believe they have resources. There is no such thing as a person with no resources. We've simply become used to thinking that resources mean only money. But look, a poor person does not have money or has very little, but they have a lot of time. They have energy. If they are young, they also have youth. Therefore, the surplus resources they do have should primarily be directed toward gaining knowledge and developing themselves by investing in yourself. Not money, but your time and your energy. If we take this category of people, the main mistake, I believe, is that they constantly chase cheap things. They have a mental limitation. Buy only cheap things. What is the trap or inefficiency of this mindset? The thing is, when you buy cheap things, you practically destroy your self-esteem. You constantly lower it. And cheap things don't last long. They don't serve long, and you have to buy them more and more often. Therefore, if you summarize the function that a cheap item performs and the function that an expensive or high-quality item performs and divide that by the price, very often it turns out that the expensive or high-quality item is actually much cheaper than the cheap one.
Many American billionaires give advice and life stories saying that the foundation of their successful financial planning is that they always bought items on sale and things from secondhand stores. This is a popular opinion, a popular recommendation. How should we understand this?
When we talk about the example where American billionaires or wealthy people buy cheap items or secondhand goods, we need to understand that their government regulations are much stricter, and for them, cheap does not mean low quality. It's a completely different concept. In our case, very often when you buy cheap things, they're not just cheap, they're low quality. If they were both cheap and high quality, since it's always about the price to quality ratio, then yes, buying things on discount would be perfectly reasonable. Therefore, I believe that one of the reasons for the inefficiency in poor people's thinking is that they buy cheap things, and usually not just cheap, but low quality, because the low price blinds them to the importance of quality. They ignore the quality and buy cheap items. And I always emphasize that you should buy the item that performs its function well. For example, if you're buying a raincoat, instead of buying a cheap, low-quality one, it's better to buy a cheap and high-quality one. But that rarely happens, so in that case, it's better to buy a more expensive but high-quality raincoat. Quality matters more, in the end, you're not buying a raincoat. You're buying long-term protection from the rain. That's the function of a raincoat, to protect you from rain. And when you buy a cheap raincoat, you're buying a cheap raincoat, not long-term protection. The mistake of poor people is that they buy the thing, not the function that the thing performs. So the first rule is learn to see the function behind every item and compare the price to the duration of the function that the item provides. Then you will have a more accurate understanding of its real cost. The second inefficiency of poor thinking, which appears in purchases, is that many poor people buy things to show off. They buy them not for themselves, but to impress others, to compare themselves with someone. In this world, you can never truly impress everyone. There will always be someone cooler or richer. So your choices should follow your own goals, not someone else's. Don't try to compete with anyone. When you buy something, you must think about the function it performs for you, not what it represents for others. For example, when a student or a salaried employee living paycheck to paycheck buys an iPhone, the question is, why does he need an iPhone? There are plenty of cheaper Android smartphones. And the point is not even about iPhone versus Android. The real question is, what do you need it for? If you need it only to scroll social media, then the most effective option would be to buy a button phone. It would be far more efficient because you cannot scroll social media on it, which means you save a huge amount of time and energy. Or take the case of buying an expensive car. In my own experience. Even when I was already a billionaire, I never bought a car more expensive than, well, the most expensive car I ever owned was a Bentley for $250,000. Although there are cars priced at $500,000, $700,000, or even $1 million. I never had a Rolls-Royce, Bugatti, Maserati, etc. Why? Because behind every purchase, I see the specific function that item performs. And it's painful to watch people buying things they cannot afford, because this leads to the third problem in poor thinking. They do not consider the cost of ownership. The cost of ownership is a huge issue. The problem in poor thinking lies in the fact that people do not understand or notice the cost of ownership. When I buy anything, I always ask myself 5 questions. First, do I really need this? Second, how long will I use it? Third, how often will I use it? Fourth, can I rent it instead of buying it? Fifth, what is the cost of ownership? And a 6th additional question. Sixth, what will be its resale value after I use it? The cost of ownership includes taxes. If you buy a car, you pay annual taxes, tires, filters, oils, maintenance. All of that makes up the cost of ownership. I also want to clarify something. You might think I'm saying that expensive items are always better, but that's not true. Expensive things are not always the best, and cheap things are not always the worst. But as I said before, to understand this, you must always evaluate everything through the function it performs. And often you may buy an expensive thing that is high quality by itself, but the cost of ownership is extremely high. For example, if you buy a luxury car, Mercedes, Rolls-Royce, you pay a large sum up front, but the taxes are higher, the filters are more expensive, the tires are more expensive, insurance is more expensive. Everything is more expensive. So if you calculate the real cost of an item, which includes the initial price plus the cost of ownership, it may turn out that you purchase the function it performs at a very high price. So definitely pay attention to this. Write in the comments 2 situations: when you bought a cheap and low-quality item, and the opposite, when you bought an expensive item, but it turned out to be ineffective because it didn't perform the function as well as another item could have. For example, even during my buggy tours, I gave an example. We were eating from disposable Chinese plastic plates, forks, and spoons. And The most interesting part, this disposable tableware was the most effective option at that moment. Yes, we could have used glass or porcelain plates, silver cutlery, etc. But the Chinese disposable ones were more effective. Why? Because in the step it's hard to wash dishes, there is no water, and it is much easier to collect everything and throw it away in a garbage bag and later drop it off at the nearest village. Otherwise, the dishes would get scratched, broken, and lose their appearance. So again, think in terms of functions and goals. The value of any item is determined by the function or purpose it fulfills. Make sure you complete this reflection task. Describe a time when you bought a cheap, low-quality item and a time when you bought an expensive item that still did not satisfy you. It will help you understand how to make smarter purchasing decisions. And if we look at how people with rich thinking make purchases, I wouldn't even say rich people, but people with wealthy or effective thinking, they treat every purchase as the purchase of function, and that function is tied to their goal. They have a goal, and to reach that goal, they need an item that performs a certain function that they buy the item that most effectively performs that function for achieving their goal. That's the first point. Second, people with wealthy thinking always view purchases as investments. They always think, what will this give me in the future? Their planning horizon is longer. For example, there's a video online where I talked about buying earrings for my wife. I once bought her a pair for $1 million. From the perspective of buying jewelry, this seems like a foolish purchase. How can you spend $1 million on earrings? But from an investment perspective, I bought investment-grade diamonds. They are certified and numbered, and their price only increases. So it turns out that I bought earrings, but in reality, I bought an investment. A poor person might see this and think, oh, he bought expensive earrings. I'll buy some too. But they might buy ordinary jewelry not related to investment-grade diamonds. And as a result, they will simply buy very expensive glass. If a diamond is not investment-grade, it is essentially just a shiny rock with low resale value. The same logic applies to everything. For example, when I bought a car for driving in the city, I thought, I need an all-weather car, something capable of driving in the mountains and something I could use for hunting later. That's why I bought a Land Cruiser 300, the sport version. It allows me to drive comfortably in any weather. It has a strong secondary market. The Land Cruiser is extremely popular, and later I can use it as a hunting vehicle. This is how you should approach all your purchases. Unfortunately, poor people buy things to satisfy immediate needs, while wealthy-minded people buy things as steps toward their goals. They buy the function. And the more functions an item fulfills, the cheaper it becomes for them in terms of value. For example, when I bought the Land Cruiser, I needed to travel from point A to point B. I compared price and quality and applied the 5 questions I mentioned earlier. But because I know that the same vehicle gives me additional value, mountain trips, hunting, and future use, I see that for the same price, I get more functions, which makes it more cost-effective.
Such an important question is asked by all beginning entrepreneurs. When they attend business seminars, when they follow popular bloggers, all of them in one voice say, rent an apartment you cannot afford, buy expensive cars, definitely go on extremely expensive vacations. This will charge you with energy, expand your boundaries and your sense of normal. And all of this will supposedly skyrocket your path to becoming an entrepreneur. And all of this completely contradicts what you are explaining right now. How should we properly understand this?
Well, first of all, you need to clearly understand that when many bloggers or businessmen, especially in the info business, buy expensive cars, Rolls Royces, and so on, when they show yachts, well, not yachts, but expensive houses, apartments, and so on, you must understand that this is primarily a marketing tool. Because expensive cars, Rolls Royces, apartments, yachts, helicopters immediately attract attention, and the goal of these people is to capture your attention. This is the first thing you need to understand, because very often these cars are not even theirs. They rent them. That is the first point. The second point, yes, this tool works, but you must understand when it works. In our brain, there are 2 systems. The first system is our conscious mind, and the second is our subconscious, and they work differently. As a rule, our conscious mind sets the goals. We say, we want to earn money, we want to achieve something, and so on. But the problem is that we set goals for ourselves, Yet in reality, we are constantly overtaken by procrastination, laziness, excuses, justifications, and so on. Why does this happen? It happens because there is no agreement between our conscious I and our subconscious. Imagine that your head is an office, and inside this office there is a CEO, your conscious mind, and a CFO, your subconscious. So the CEO comes in and says, "All right, we're earning big money. Let's go." Big money means new opportunities. Big money is freedom, and freedom means new possibilities. And then he leaves. All the employees run to the CFO, the subconscious, and say, "Oh, the boss said we're earning big money. Let's go." And the subconscious replies, "Why did the boss say that?" They answer, "The boss said big money means freedom, and freedom means new opportunities." And the subconscious says, "But new opportunities mean new risks. Risks mean problems. Problems mean responsibility. Do we need responsibility? We were living just fine. Why do we need new responsibility and new problems?" And all the employees say, "Well, then what we tell the boss?" And the subconscious says, "Let's pretend we're sick. Let's distract him. Let's make him lose focus. Let's make him lazy." And this is how mechanisms activate that keep a person from achieving their goals. Why does this happen? The root is the lack of agreement between the conscious mind and the subconscious. The thing is, the subconscious is a reptilian brain, the amygdala, if I'm not mistaken, responsible for survival. Our ego lives there, and it always operates by the principle, "I will give you energy, but what do I get out of it?" The subconscious is what gives us energy and motivation to achieve things. But it always asks, "What's in it for me?" And if the subconscious does not see any benefit, pleasure, or a personal reward, it will not give energy to the conscious mind. So when you set a goal, you need to clearly understand this. You set a goal, take action, achieve the result, and you must reward your subconscious. I often say that successful people are those who have turned achieving goals into a habit. And to build a habit, there is a habit formation cycle. Set a goal, take action, achieve result, reward yourself. Then your self-esteem grows, and your subconscious says, "Oh, great, the brain has learned to set the right goals. I will give him energy for that." The subconscious sees that after each goal, it gets pleasure, satisfaction, and personal benefits. Can you buy an expensive item to get motivation? Yes, you can, but only if you have already achieved several goals before that. This can be done as an intermediate reward to yourself for achieving a goal. So the principle is, first set a goal, take action, then reward yourself. Why reward yourself? To give yourself fuel to pursue an even bigger goal. By learning how to feed your subconscious this way, you launch the mechanism and strengthen your habit of achieving goals. In this case, it works. But if you buy an expensive item you cannot afford, it will demoralize you and push you into depression because it increases the level of stress you already have. You cannot simply increase stress without dopamine to balance it. Dopamine is the hormone that motivates us to pursue goals and gives us pleasure from achieving them. Cortisol is the stress hormone. When you buy something without having a big goal, you simply increase cortisol and drive yourself into stress or depression. But when you have a big dopamine release, when you clearly see your goal, then the purchase does not cause stress. Instead, it creates anticipation of an even bigger goal and even greater reward. Overall, the topic of goal setting, rewards, and purchases is huge. It is also deeply connected with psychology, and it is important to understand all the mechanisms behind it. I share this knowledge on my Telegram channel. I'll leave the link below. So subscribe. That's where we talk about all of this in more detail.